Hey everybody, and welcome back to the D&D 3.5 book club, the book club where we talk about things 3.5 and 3.5 adjacent. I'm Cliff, and today I am once again joined by my co-hosts Lonnie and Charles. How are you guys doing?
Doing pretty good today. Feeling it. Excited about this book. Lots of good stuff coming out. Charles, what about you, buddy?
Yep, I'm feeling pretty good, and yeah, this is one of the books that a lot of people consider a must-have for their games, that for reasons we'll get into.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that statement. I do kind of feel like this book, if if you're going to use it, I do kind of feel like it's kind of core, to 3.5. But I also say that about a lot of 3.5 books. This era of 3.5 books was just packed with amazing stuff, and it amazes me that during this time they were putting out 2 books a month, and they were this good. Like that's just crazy.
I mean, you got to think about the fact that we had more than a single author, out there printing these books, right? So while somebody was working on Complete Warrior, another group of dudes is probably putting together, the Complete Wizard or whatever, right? They weren't like, so I mean, on the one side, it's like, yeah, that's pretty cool that they were putting out 2 books a month, but like it doesn't surprise me that they're all so thoroughly done because they all had their fair number of hands at it. What is impressive to me is the consistency with it, because once those people have written those books, they had to give it to Wizards of the Coast or whatever, and have Wizards of the Coast look it over, have their editors go through it, their rules balancers check everything and make sure nothing was completely redonkulous. And like almost like there's not a lot of stuff that comes out in these books that just makes you think this book is just a must, like a power gamer's must have, except for Tome of Battle.
Yeah, that one's crazy. Uh, but a little bit of background information on the Complete Warrior. So the Complete Warrior came out in November of 2003. So it was one of the first 3.5 books, actually. 3.5 came out in July of 2003. Um, and again, we kind of see this huge upgrade in quality, like as soon as we switch from 3.0 to 3.5. There's a lot of really good 3.0 books out there, but again, the pendulum swings pretty far in 3.0 from amazing to really just weird and you know some of it is great and it transitions over really well, and some of it just becomes kind of completely unusable. And so this is kind of one of the first books that really solidifies that quality that I think we see with most of the 3.5 books moving forward after this.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, I can't really think of anything because I don't really know the dates the books were printed at. I can't really think of anything that was printed, after the core three, but before this book that may have had, kind of like a substandard uh build to it, or a substandard like amount of assets to it. But you know, uh, y- going to the 3.0 thing, yeah, there was definitely, like you said, there was lots of books that were just like, man, these are so good, and I carried them over to 3.5 because they were so important um to Dungeons and Dragons as a whole, that not having them in 3.5 felt like a detriment. Like, for instance, the Savage Species Guide was one of those things where it's like, man, like you want to play monsters characters, you got this level adjustment, sure, but like, what if you want to play something that doesn't have a level adjustment? What if you want to make your own monster even, or what if you want to like, add some templates to a character or something? Like that was just a book that was just chock full of good stuff. And then on the other hand, you have things like, I'm trying to think, like the Oriental Adventures book, which kind of felt like weak and out of place almost. And most things in that book got an errata after 3.5 to like buff them and make them kind of on par with other races and classes in 3.5.
Yeah, that was a weird book. We'll have to do that one sometime. It's good. I like it, but it was definitely, it had some funk in there.
Yeah, there was definitely some bad stuff up in that Jujubes.
So, Charles, what was like? So when you were looking through this book, what was something that just really jumped out at you? It was like, ah, I gotta talk about this.
Uh, that would be the divine feats. If anyone has ever played 3.5 clerics and paladins, they get turn undead, and if you have a lot of charisma like mine to do, you easily start banking up a lot of these turn undead attempts. And the problem is that if you aren't fighting undead, which is a lot of the time, uh, those turn undead attempts, they're completely useless. And even if you do encounter undead, a lot of times it's still better to bonk them. Turn undead only destroys them outright if they're very weak, and if they're so weak, you don't really want to spend resources against them. And frighting them so that they actually run away from you can actually be a pain. Uh, and the divine feats, some of which are actually free actions, allow you to turn those into something more useful. And I strong believer that if you're playing a cleric or paladin, you'll want at least one of these, maybe up to 3 or so. Because they don't get a lot of bonus feats and the like, so there's other things you might want to get, and you kind of get a bit of diminishing returns. But I always take at least one of these so that I have some resource to spend, or another resource to spend on things that make my character better. Like Divine Might, you see here, you get to add your charisma bonus to your weapon damage for 1 full round as a free action, which is very nice. You could easily have 10 or more turn undead attempts, and using that can, if you get your charisma to +4, which is pretty modest, not too crazy, you could be doing an extra 4 damage for every hit for several rounds. It's quite nice.
So just to jump in on that specific one, Divine Might here looks really like when you think about it, and you're looking at it, you're reading it, you're like, man, that's pretty good, right? Like you get to spend your free actions, toss a return or rebuke undead, at it, and then bam, you've got your charisma bonus for 1 full round. But in the same token, I don't remember what book it's in. I could probably jump on the SRD and find it real quick. There's a feat out there that's like it's just a flat like I think it's a paladin or cleric feat. I don't remember if it's
Yeah,
specific
I
to one
think
of
I
the
know what
classes,
you're talking
but
about. The one that,
it lets you substitute your charisma or your wisdom modifier. There's actually one for every single stat that you can use. But theoretically, it lets you substitute your wisdom and or charisma for your strength, which you would be doing because, especially if you're playing like a paladin, like if you're doing a point buy system, which you brought up earlier, so we'll get into that right after this. Like if you're doing a point buy system, you might not have crazy stats for every single stat. So if you did, pumped all your stuff into charisma, you could just take that feat and have this ability all the time. So like while this is cool, it's just not as cool as like another feat that you could take that just does the same thing but better. And it doesn't have nearly as many prerequisites, I don't think, if I remember correctly. I'll go look it up real quick. We can get into the next thing.
yeah, that was something that 3.5. So 3.5 and Magic the Gathering kind of around this time kind of started running into the same issues, and that was just the insane amount of content for both. And you would just run into situations where, there would be something that was just very clearly better than something else and kind of, made the previous version, just negated the previous version.
Yeah, the good old power creep.
But I do like this. I didn't plan to talk about this, but this feat right here, Zen Archery, in Pathfinder, that would become an entire class. the Zen archer.
Yeah.
Yep,
I,
monk archetype.
So it's really cool to see. I do kind of feel like, I was going through this book and I feel like I was looking at, uh, I was looking at a previous version of Pathfinder, which I basically am because Pathfinder obviously came out of, 3.0 and 3.5, but it just feels like this book is kind of a bridge from, where we started in 3.0 to where we got to in Pathfinder.
Yeah, there's a number of various feats and the like where you can, if you know Pathfinder first edition, there's clear correlation. Sometimes the abilities are exactly the same or extremely similar, and you see a lot of them in this particular book.
Yeah, but I really enjoy these divine feats, and like I feel like the people who designed this were really aware that the paladin's turn undead wasn't really getting a lot of action, like wasn't really getting a lot of love there. So, this is just a great way to, if you're a paladin. I mean, even if you're a cleric, I guess, but um like if you're a paladin, just like it's a great way to take something that you weren't really using anyway and make something cool out of it.
Yeah, I really like taking a resource that's not doing much and being able to use it for something that's nearly always going to be useful.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. But for a minute, I kind of wanted to talk about the Hexblade a little bit. But before I do, I wanted to kind of ask you guys, like, do you have any experience with the Hexblade or with any of these like new classes that are introduced in this book?
yeah. I definitely have played a Hexblade at one time or another. Um, I felt like it was like it was like a pretty mid class. Like, I mean, it does have, like, you look at it right here, you got your good base attack bonus, you got one good, save, two average saves, uh, and then you got these hexblade curses and stuff, which always like, they didn't feel as impactful when I was playing the class as I had hoped that they would feel. Because I was kind of doing this whole like idea of being like a person who like curses other people or curses like my enemies or whatever, and it didn't really feel like I had that capability at so much. Like, they were okay and they did things, but they never felt like, oh man, that was the reason we won that fight, was that guy like got a couple minuses to his attacks or whatever. um but the ability to have spells as a melee class is just not to be overlooked. Even if they're not very high level spells, it's just such a strong, like, bonus. And the fact that it's only like four levels of spell, I mean, you don't need a particularly huge investment to make it work. Like like a 12 or a 14 will get you started, and after a few level ups, you just toss another one in there, get a 13, toss another one in there, get a 14, and bada bing, bada boom, you've got your four. You can cast all four levels of the spells that are available to your class, which I think is really really strong, because there's just not enough melee orient. Like, melee suffers from not, as a lot of people will say in this game, melee suffers from not being wizards. um And, like, whilst I don't personally hold that affect, I think that melee characters like rogues and fighters are exceptionally strong in this particular like edition of the game. I think that, having options in combat is definitely always a plus.
Yeah, dude, I am 100% right on board with you. Um, my kind of general gist of the Hexblade, and I did have a player of mine who played a Hexblade in my longest running campaign, the one that, I think we kind of all have one of those, like the campaign that you start with, or the campaign that, is your first or one of your first, and you just kind of keep on going with it. But my buddy Steve played a Hexblade, and he was just insane. And part of the reason why is, yeah, the Hexblade, it has, offensive abilities, but its defensive abilities are just insane. Um, Somewhat recently, I had the experience of being able to play a paladin in Pathfinder, and I was a charisma paladin. Like I dumped like most of my points into charisma, and I got bonuses to charisma, and it it got to this point where my saves all had like +8 or +9 to them because of my charisma, and the Hexblade gets to do that. So that's really something that's been, primarily the domain of the paladin up to this point. But then this guy comes along, he can also add his charisma to his saves. Um, Not only can he add his charisma to his saves, he gets arcane resistance, he gets metal, he gets like greater fortitude, improved fortitude, iron will, just all this. It just becomes very, very difficult to actually hurt this guy, by like magical means.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Hexblade, especially with the limited spell cast and everything like that, does kind of remind me of a like a arcane version of a paladin, with a lot of their different abilities and capabilities.
Yeah, I said that. Did I not say that when we were talking about this? I was like, the Hexblade is like the paladin of arcane sorcery.
Yeah, and they're great. And like we said, they're just so versatile. So, if you're a person who would like to play a fighter, but you're like, dude, I don't want to just swing every round, this is perfect. Like you have options, you got stuff you can do. You got, you're going to be really tough to take down. If you put a bunch into Constitution, I mean, Jeebus, you're going to be the last person standing.
All right, so just a quick errata to what I said earlier. So I'm looking through a big list of feats and stuff right now. I don't know if it's by any means the definitive list of feats. I can't find one that specifically does strength for charisma. And I think what I was thinking of was actually a monk one that swaps out wisdom for charisma. So maybe divine might is kind of the only thing you really have an option for,
You know,
which would make that a much stronger take, I think, for paladins than I originally thought.
I thought so, but there's so many feats out there. Like the likelihood of there being a feat that did that, I was like, well, there might be. Uh,
Yeah.
when players always ask me, "Oh, is there a feat that can do this or that?" I have to, and if I can't think of one, I say, not one that I'm aware of or know
I,
of. But
I mean, to be fair, like if you give things the right prerequisite, right? Like you can make it. Like that's the great thing about 3.5 is like, yeah, sure, there might not be a feat that does that, but like look at other feats like the aesthetic mage or whatever, or is that what it's called? Aesthetic? Why is that called aesthetic mage? It's so weird. Which switches, monk and ninja bonuses from wisdom to charisma. Like, you look at it, you're like, okay, find what page it's on, go look it up, and whatever prerequisite it is, just copy that prerequisite, make it slightly more, paladin to charisma variant, like figure out what it was that they did for that feat to work, and you could just make a new feat. Who cares? You can totally do that, and that's like one of the great things about it, like that makes this work. Like, for instance, I played Soul Knife one time, and we had this book that we used that had just a Monty Cook's arms and equipment guide or something. I don't think it's not the same arms and equipment guide that we're going to be doing later, but there's a different one called Monty Cook's arms and equipment guide, and it specifically just had ridiculous weapons in it and stuff. And I was like, man, I want to play a Soul Knife and use uh my Soul Blade shape ability to change this into this, right? Like, uh, and I found a feat that says, "Oh, shape Soul Knife." It lets you turn it into a long sword, and I was like, and these are the prerequisites for that. And I was like, okay, but I want to turn it into something that was essentially the Buster Sword from Final Fantasy VII, and it was an exotic weapon. So I tacked on, if you want to take this shape weapon, take exotic weapon proficiency, that weapon, then take regular shape weapon, and then take another feat to get to this, final destination. And you know, the DM was like, yeah, sure, no, that's totally like a viable feat. You're taking two other feats to get there. Like, just balance it, and things like usually you can make a feat to do the thing that you want it to do.
Yeah, I'm in 100% agreement. And I do remember, now I think this is from the PHB too, but I do specifically remember that there was a sorcerer and bard feat and an intelligence based feat. I think it was called like Arcane Strike. Um, but it was very similar. It was something where for a round or for X amount of time, you could add your charisma bonus or your intelligence bonus to your damage. And like as 3.5 kept going on, we kept getting more and more feats like that. So, I think towards the end of 3.5, you ended up with, you could basically switch anything to anything. And that's, we kind of run into that in Pathfinder. Um, Today, there's a way to do just about anything. And there are all kinds of feats that like let you merge, monk levels with paladin levels or cleric levels with, this or that. So I mean, once you get to the end of 3.5 era, I mean, sky's the limit. You can do pretty much anything.
Right. And then you got like, see, but the problem with that is, right, is you have certain situations that are just uh like the power creep, as he said. You had your instance of, like, they switch this for one round, you get your attack bonus for one round with your charisma. Like, and then you have things like the monk. This is like, oh yeah, instead of getting bonus AC from wisdom, you get it from charisma, and then you just make your monk really charismatic, and you're just like, I'm not, I don't have to do anything. And then you also switch, or you just give yourself a crap ton of wisdom, and switch your melee attacks over to charisma based or over to wisdom based, uh, with a different feat, and it's there's like permanent changes, whereas instead of just like single round changes. So it's almost like you want to go back and you want to errata those old feats to be like, yeah, if you take divine might, like, you just get to use your charisma instead of your strength, and rather than making it based on a round and also spending one of your turn on deads.
Yep, 100%. And really, just as we're kind of going along here, I wanted to call attention to this really quick. The variants. And I've talked before about how
Yeah.
much I love variants, any kind of class variants. Um, so if you're playing a paladin or a ranger and you don't really care about your spells, as many paladins or rangers didn't back in 3.5, you can take these variants. Like, look at that. Just so much cool stuff that you can do that doesn't have any spell casting involved. I particularly enjoy this one, Paladin Holy Sword. So I played
Mhm.
a 3.5 Paladin for a while, and like his entire goal, the goal that I had for him was to be able to cast Holy Sword, which is a spell that just gives you a Holy Avenger. I'm just like, wow, that's cool. So I think this is cool that, you get to kind of just have this without having, to necessarily, do all that other stuff. And I think this is also really good for low magic campaigns or no magic campaigns where you can kind of, put this in without having to, rely on spells or it's just a great way to like if you're doing a low magic or a no magic game, it's a great way to have, paladins and rangers, but not just say, okay, well, you're a paladin, but you can't use spells.
Right, because that just take because like paladins are balanced around having spells, like, and when if you're just like, oh man, well, we're in Dark Sun, and you can't use magic here because if you do, you risk killing yourself or somebody else around you. Like, that sucks, like, so it's good to have these other options for things like that where you can just be like, oh, they get something else instead of actual raw magic at their disposal.
What is also kind of nice about that is that paladins in 3.5 are very mad. They require a lot of different attributes, And if you don't have spellcasting, you don't need to bring their wisdom up very high. You don't want to dump it because it still will save. But if you don't have the spellcasting, you could put those points elsewhere if it's a point buy, or if you're rolling stats, it's another stat that you might be able to afford not to have a lot of.
Right. I mean, because paladins, let's see, I mean, like strength, definitely constitution, like, and then you got to think you want your spells, so that's some wisdom right there. You want to be able to turn undead, so that's some charisma right there. All of a sudden, you're like, well, I guess I'm really dumb because
And,
otherwise I'm not gonna be able to do anything.
Yep.
and
Every paladin I've ever rolled has had an 8 intelligence.
and they only get the 1 skill or the 2 skill points per level as well. So like really they don't really want to dump intelligence either, but they kind of have to because you kind of need to dump something.
Because if you don't, I mean, like, you don't want to dump intelligence because then you're like, oh well, I want to use knowledge religion and like because I'm a paladin and I should know I should know things about religion, but you can't because you don't have any goddamn skill points.
Yep, you're too dumb. Because and there's a lot of things the paladins need too. Like especially in 3.5, you need knowledge religion. You probably need ride. You probably need handle animal. And there's all these other skills that you get that you just can't use. You just can't.
You're gonna need climb. You're gonna
Yep.
need
Probably going
well,
to need
maybe not.
diplomacy because you're
Oh,
lawful good and you don't want to mess
exactly.
that up.
Yeah. So there's like I'm actually. It's actually almost disgusting to me that paladins only get a 2+ int for their skill checks.
Yeah, I mean,
My
who else gets 2 in 3.5? Do fighters just get 2?
fighters and clerks also only get 2.
Ah, that's rough. That's
Yeah,
rough.
in my personal opinion, I kind of feel that the classes that only get 2 skill points should be bumped up to 4, unless there's something that's intelligent based, like wizards. I believe also only gets 2 in base. I could be misremembering that, but their main stat is intelligence, so they get a lot of that back.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's why like a lot of times, like if I'm gonna do something like play a paladin or something, uh obviously based on the level of the campaign, I'll try to do my best to find something with like a few levels of outs like a race or something that's only like got 2 or 3 hit dice and like no level adjustment, that's outsider, so I can be like, oh well, I'm one of these and I have 3 levels of outsider, so I got 24 skill points that I can kind of spend on the things that I know I'm absolutely going to need to be a semi decent paladin. Like,
yeah, and it kind of is a little baffling to me that how fighters, clerks, and paladins only get 2 skill points per level, but barbarians get 4, which is
Yep.
very
come
interesting.
on, man, the barbarian can't even read.
You got to
You
spend
gotta
one of
give
those
you gotta
skill
give
points.
it something.
Yeah. You got to spend one of those skill points just to be able to read. That's a real rule. That's real.
Yeah, my favorite thing was one of my buddies made a barbarian one time, and we were using the flaws and traits perk or whatever like system where you can drop you can take a flaw to grab an extra feat early on. Um, and he was playing a barbarian and he took like a phobia of books. So so whenever we walked into a library or something, he just started rampaging and would go into a rage and start attacking the books.
That's amazing. Oh, I love it, dude. So, like, was there anything else that was like really jumping out at you guys?
Um, I mean, so we talked about the Hexblade. I wanted to talk about the uh crap. What was the for basic classes? I wanted to cover the swashbuckler just because of last session we covered Stormrack, which is the ocean based book, and it talks about piracy and all that stuff. And this, I mean, swashbuckler. How much more piratey do you get than a swashbuckler?
The answer is
Um,
none. None more
yeah,
piratey.
exactly. You can, that is piracy at its very best right there. On my side over here, oh, god dang it! Like I don't know what's going on, but my PDF over here is cracked. It's not working. Um, it's not showing me the swashbuckler stuff. Oh, there we go. I got it. So like I just love I like this class a lot because one, it starts with weapon finesse. Like can we just take a moment to appreciate that? Um, 10 hit dice class. It's a melee class that obviously wants to be a dexterity based class. Uh, but the other thing is like one of the things that always bugged me about weapon finesse is that yeah, sure, it hits, but it doesn't
Yep.
damage.
Yep.
So you're still feel like you're like, yeah, that's great. I love that for them. But at the same time, you're like, man, I dumped strength and that was a mistake. Um,
Yeah, see, that
uh,
was my buddy Steve who ran that Hexblade. He did that. He had like I think it was called an Elven Thin Blade, and he took weapon finesse, which was great. And like he was, he had a full base attack. He was always hitting, but you would like we had a barbarian in the party who would just cleave through things and just was doing insane damage. And then he would be like, I hit for 4. I
yeah,
hit for 2.
exactly. Exactly. And I mean that's like where the downside of this comes. But they do get things, like insightful strike, where as long as they're using a rapier or whip or something kind of piratey, they get a bonus. They get dodge bonuses. They're really like if you want to survive, like this is like if you're just having like have one of those DMs who's just like out to get you. This is where you go because this class is built to survive with lucky and dodge bonuses here and grace and stuff like that. Then you've got things like weakening critical, lower enemy strength. So even if they do hit you, they're not hitting you as hard. And then you got wounding critical at level 19, deals 2 points of constitution damage. Like it's cool to have this ability to like damage stats without being magical in some way, shape, or form. Um, and so I just really like the idea of this. I wish it was a little more piratey. Like I think that they have. I don't remember if it was called Swashbuckler or something else. Maybe it was Dread Pirate. I'm thinking of, but there's
That's a
one
good
that's
one.
like it's got like bonuses when it's on a ship. Like it doesn't have to roll for balance during like storms and stuff like that, which I think is pretty cool. Um, but you've got things in here like acrobatic charge, lets you run over difficult terrain without any problems, and things like that are always really like interesting and fun to me because how often do you really take into account difficult terrain? Um, and then all of a sudden you've got this problem and you're like, well, I've got the solution. Like, um, so that's great. Uh, yeah, so I just wanted to bring that class like to the forefront real quick and talk about it because I thought that was a fun, interesting class.
100%. And I do have 2 quick things to say about that. Number one, the Swashbuckler in 3rd edition, 3.5, is such a giant, in my opinion, such a giant improvement over the Swashbuckler from 2nd edition. In 2nd edition, the Swashbuckler was a kit, and what it got was it could dual wield, which was really cool. It was a thief that could dual wield, so that's really cool. But so you were a thief, right? But then you lost your sneak attack.
Ooh,
Like you didn't get to backstab anymore. You could not backstab as a thief, which in 2nd edition, I really do feel like backstab was a big part of kind of the thief's whole thing, and missing out on that was
brutal.
big. Yeah. Um, and also, I just really like this class because it evokes this picture in my brain. I don't know if you guys, well, I know Charles, you've read Order of the Stick, but there's this great character in Order of the Stick. He's like this sky captain, very
Mhm.
charismatic, very uh just super swashbuckly, type guy. Um, and this class just, evokes kind of images of that character. And in the comic, he teaches one of the other characters how to like be his prestige class, And the cool thing about it is you get bonuses whenever you make like a quip or you know, um an intelligent remark as you're fighting somebody. So it's perfect.
Yeah, that sounds great. Actually, I was
It's
actually thinking about that because I was like, man, like it seems like this should almost have the bard ability that's like for making fun of people when you're fighting them and they can't hit you or something. They I can't remember what the name of that bard ability is. Anybody got that off the top of their head?
vicious mockery.
Vicious mockery. Thank you. That's the one.
Yeah, it's a class with a lot of flair.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
What do you think, Charles? Was there any other stuff that you kind of looked through here and you were just like, oh man, I gotta touch on that one.
Well, I have made a to the chalice before, which is one of the prestige classes.
Oh yeah. All right, I'm gonna go there. Also a really good game. It's like $2 or $3 on Steam. It's called Knights of the Chalice. If you're just really into 3.5 combat, because that's all it is. Knights of the Chalice, very good game.
All right, page 53. Oh, can we talk about this table real quick before we go down there?
Yep.
I I think that it's really funny that they made this table. The good guys, the bad guys who like horses.
It's great. And the last one, the Stormrack book, it had the same thing. It's like these are the good guys, these are the bad guys, these are the nemesis guys, these are the terrain guys, these are the weapon specialist guys. Like,
Let's
did we need that?
take a quick moment and notice that on both the good guys and the bad guys, we have the Justicar right here. Because the requirement to be a Justicar is being lawful of any type. It
Yeah, it
doesn't.
doesn't matter, what you believe in. It just requires that you believe it.
Very thoroughly. All right, we can go down. I just wanted to talk about that little prestige class thing real quick.
I love that. I love that they started doing this. It's hilarious.
Yeah, I like that too. Like that kind of stuff feels almost more for the game master side of things. As a game master, it's much easier to play around with the prestige classes. In all honesty, versus being a character from level 1 without a plan as you level up over time. But Knight of the Chalice, it's one of those prestige classes which is specific towards an enemy type, in this case, evil outsiders. And if you're facing a lot of evil outsider, or if you're in the abyss or the like, lower planes, this is really good. If you're in a situation where that's not what you're up against, it's just okay.
I feel personally attacked by this class because I play a lot of evil outsiders.
Well, they
And I
were
feel,
under the nemesis category from the previous page.
Yeah, I love this class. I've always kind of had this build in my head. I've never actually done it, but it would be a ranger paladin knight of the chalice. So you're just like super, super, super specialized at killing evil outsiders.
like, I mean, Night of the Chalice, like, it sounds great on paper, right? Like, we're discussing it. It sounds good, but like, really, I haven't ever really looked into this class at all before right now. But I'm telling, like, just from the 2 seconds we've been on this page, I can tell you three major flaws that are involved that are involved in this. One is that, like you said, it only seems to be um great against like demons and devils of that like in that nature. But two is that because it's so specialized, it feels the what's the prerequisites to get into it feel very over the top for something that's meant to be like a super specialized class, because we've got the prerequisites down below down just a little bit here. The first one +8 base attack bonus.
Oh man, that's rough.
That means you're not even getting into this class until you're level 9. Like,
Yep.
and so I mean, and it's a 10 level class, which means you pretty much have to know for a fact that for the rest of the campaign, this is what you're doing. You're killing demons. Like, I mean,
Oh
and
wait,
that
no, level 10. Um, so if I'm not mistaken here, which I could be, so you need knowledge, religion, 10. Oh wait, no, never mind. Never mind.
Yeah,
uh,
I
because
was
yeah,
yeah,
3.5,
yeah,
the
it's
3 point. Yeah,
4 at the
one
level
plus,
1.
yeah, it's
yeah.
1+3.
Yep, never mind.
So theoretically, you can get knowledge religion 10 at level 7. Um, but yeah, so so you're looking at a level 9 character coming into this. Like, I mean, and that's like, that'd be great for your, for a box set, right? Which we talked, like, because what's going to come out in a box set. Like, if you're doing something where like, you got a pre-made campaign, like the Totem of all, like the elemental evil, uh, campaign thing that you're running. Yeah, sure, like this might be great, but like if you're playing with a random GM who kind of lets you guys run the story and kind of lets or like just like story crafts from week to week, like this, you might invest in this and never have it be useful, or only have it be useful in these super rare situations. And the second thing that I noticed or the third thing, the last thing I should say, that I've noticed just from being here for a couple of seconds that I wasn't really super stoked about was, again, it's got the same problem as the warrior and the paladin and the cleric, is it's only got a 2+ intelligence modifier. Like, so it's still not getting great skills. And you got to remember that if you're going into this, you've already placed 5 ranks in knowledge, 10 ranks in knowledge religion, and you're getting 2+ intelligence modifier, which means you can't even make intelligence your dump stat.
Yeah,
You
and
got to
also, I mean, I might be mistaken about this, but do paladins get knowledge planes as a class skill in 3.5?
That is a good question.
So if they don't, that means you'd be cross-classing. So you'd be spending 2 points for every one
Yeah,
point.
yeah. So you're spending 2 points for every 1 point of that rank, and then again, and yeah, I mean that's probably why it's 5 and not 10,
Yep.
realistically, because it's a cross-class skill. So I mean, you're going to level 10, you're spending pretty much every available skill point you have on knowledge skills, which means you got nothing to back your character up. If you got to make a tumble check, if you got to swim, climb, ride a horse, nothing. So I mean, this class, it looks cool on paper. Like, it's awesome to look at and consider. I'm gonna be awesome against demons. I'm gonna go kill me a pit fiend. No big deal. But then, like, you go to play it and it's just terrible.
Yeah, it takes a huge investment. You don't want to dump intelligence. You probably want to be human. So you get extra skill point from that, which is
Right.
what I did. And it it takes a long time to come along. I will say, for an enemy to specialize against, evil outsiders is a pretty good one, because there's a lot of evil outsiders of different levels and a lot of high level encounters. You probably will encounter evil outsiders at some point, of course, depending on the campaign. They could be very scarce, and theoretically you could never encounter one. But uh, if that's the case, and you make this character, you and the game master did not communicate very
Yeah,
much.
Right.
if it was my game and somebody it was like, I want to play a Knight of the Chalice, like I would, if I wasn't gonna have demons in that game, I would tell that person just straight up, like, dude, we're like, there's no demons here. Like, you don't need to do this. Or I'd just
Yeah.
be like, okay, we're gonna put demons in now.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'd probably take the latter of the two choices and go with, guess we're adding demons, because I mean, I don't want to ever tell my players they can't or shouldn't do something. I mean, I'll be like, hey man, like, I'm gonna be perfectly honest. Like, when I play Shadowrun, right? I'm like, I don't allow people to play riggers, because riggers like they get like 50 drones and they get to control all their drones on their turn, and then all their drones get to move and attack and yada yada. And I'm like, if you want to play one-on-one with me sometime, I'll let you play a rigger. I don't care, because then it's just you, and it's just you and me hanging out playing a game of control the robots. But I'm not gonna let you play that when we have 4 other people at the table and everybody's waiting on their turn. Like, and so like that's just one of my few rules where, like, one of my few instances where I'm like, I'm not gonna let you do something. And then I also am like, man, I'm not super familiar with the Matrix, so if you want to do hacking and stuff, I'll try to do the research for it and make it happen for you. But I like to streamline a lot of the stuff that they have in that. So if like your whole jam is being in the Matrix, like maybe you want to like help me learn it, or maybe you want to like change your class a little bit, because
Yeah.
like, and I don't like, but like something like this in a game of D&D where, it's kind of more open and fluid, and this isn't really like I have to learn an entire separate subsystem to the game on how to play it, and it's just a matter of like, oh, I throw extra different monsters in there. Yeah, sure, go ahead, play the Night of the Chalice. I'll throw some demons at you. You guys will have a good time. Maybe you'll get a reoccurring bad guy out of it. Who knows? Like,
Yeah, it's kind of an unexpected thing. But I completely agree that number one, I think it's really important as a player to be cognizant of how much time you're taking on your turns, and like how much time you're kind of taking in comparison to everybody else. Because like, you know, we all showed up to play, and it's really not fun if if an hour has gone by and you haven't done anything. That's just really like that's not a fun time.
right.
Um,
Like, I felt that happened a lot, during our campaign that we played together, with what's his name, uh, because he had the dog, and he was always like, "Well, can I get my dog to come over here and do this?" You're like, "I don't really think your dog can do that." And you're like, "Well, can I get my dog to go do this?" And you're like, "I really don't think your dog can do that either." And he's just trying to like make things happen, and like it was just like a lot of, which is one of the reasons why I'm not super big on animal companions, but like I'll let them slide. But it's like just one of those things. It's like, yeah, man, like, okay, yeah, sure, like kind of getting in the way of other people's turns because you're like sitting here asking for 20 minutes about what your dog can do. But like, I don't know, it's just one of those little things that like it's a pet peeve of mine as a
yeah,
DM.
yeah, that was definitely an issue. It was a huge issue.
I personally don't mind players having a companion, but with the summoning spell, I've been pretty fortunate that I've never had anyone try to use the summon monster spell to any great degree. But if a player did do that and did that often, their character might be more likely to die than the other members of the party.
Yeah, man. Like if you're gonna do that stuff, you better have the rules pulled up.
Right. Like, don't be saying I'm gonna cast Nature's Greater Ally 7, and then me be like, okay, well, what are you summoning? And you're like, I don't know. Like, let me go look up the spell, and then take 5 minutes to find the spell in the book, and be like, oh,
I
let me
summoned
take,
these things,
let me
and
look at 3 different monsters before I figure out which one I want to bring out. Like, nah, get that stuff sorted on your off time, like between games, dude. Like,
have a cue card ready with the stats on it.
Yeah. And I mean for me, like I kind of feel like if I'm playing D&D, that's like that's interaction for me, right? Like deciding what I'm gonna do on my next turn. Like because something that I've realized over the past couple of years is that like I have this weird, I guess, syndrome when I play D&D because like for years and years I didn't get to play. I was the forever DM,
mhm,
and I love DMing. I love it.
I've been there.
And but the thing is, like when you're the DM, you've always got stuff going on. You've always got something to do, and when you're a player, you don't. So you can have this downtime, um, and I kind of feel like using that downtime to plan out what you're going to do is part of the game.
Right. I mean, and I think that's a huge portion of like what some players they miss, like, is that there's other people's turns going on. Like, yeah, sure, you should be listening to what's going on, but you shouldn't be like ignoring like what you're planning on doing. and then just kind of coming up with it like slap hazard after the fact, you know?
Yeah, it's just
Yeah,
table etiquette, all that good stuff.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I know with myself, I'll have several turns planned in advance, and sometimes that's bad because then sometimes something happens that makes that plan not available, and I have to change things or forget to take something that happened into consideration. But if before it's your turn, you should probably have a good idea after everyone takes their turn what you'll be doing on your turn, and try to get through it, because especially if there's a player who all they can do is shoot their short bow every turn or the
And then
like.
they're still looking at like what they're gonna do with their turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember we had this character a long time ago, or this player that that played with us, and eventually this person did learn the rules. But I mean, we played for like, I want to say 6 years with this person, and every single turn, it was, oh, what do I roll for this? Right? It's like, dude, you're making an attack roll. You want to roll a d20. It's like, oh, okay, I hit. What do I roll for that? It's like, you got a longsword, you do d8. And they did eventually get it, but that's kind of one of those things that when when I'm a player, or when I'm DMing, I I always make it a point to know what I can do. Like, I've got my stuff down. If I'm playing, I know what my character can do. Like, I don't want the DM to have to be, looking stuff up and, taking time away from everybody else. Like, I kind of want to have that stuff on lockdown.
Right. And I mean, and there's exceptions to that rule too. You know, like I've definitely been in a situation where I was like, oh, I didn't know that this was going to come up, but we need to go over here to like look up how me being in 50% cover versus 100% cover changes, my attack roll or your attack roll or something. Like that's a bad example because, it's +4, +2. But like, but there's little things like that that I've had to look up in the past, and now I know them, but like you just weren't prepared for it, and it came
Yeah,
up
absolutely.
because something happened. But it's a different story when it's like a basic mechanic of the game, and you're like, or your character, and you're just like, wow, like you built this character, and you're not even really sure how to play it. Like, come on, man, like
Yeah,
get your stuff together.
yeah, I understand not knowing the rules for drowning and the like, because as a game master, I always have to look that up before involving encounter where the players might start drowning, uh, or even the grapple rules, because especially in 3.5, there's a whole chart that goes into it, and it's quite complicated.
Yeah, man,
But
Like 2 pages.
I can't tell you like how off the wall it was for me to have to figure out like how hard it is for one of my players to grapple another one of my players for, and then had to figure out how many rounds he's got to maintain him being grappled to successfully remove just the bottom half of his full plate armor, because I didn't think it was going to come up. And and then suddenly you're like, okay, well, it takes 12 rounds to put on armor, so we'll say 6 rounds to take it off, so you got to pin him for 6 rounds to take off the bottom half of his armor.
and and game masters, if you come across an instance where you don't know what the rules is, the players are doing something kind of off the wall, make a call in the moment, and then after the game look up to see what it actually is, because
100%.
that can stall a game for
Oh
well over
yeah,
10
for sure.
minutes looking up for an obscure rule.
Yeah, like I'm definitely guilty of being like, I don't know what the ruling is for this, but I'm gonna make one, and then having to come back to the game the next week and being like, I looked up what I did last time and it was wrong, but we're gonna fix that going forward if it comes up again.
Yeah, same.
All right, so
I'm in 100% agreement.
now we've got the spell sword. You've been itching at it. I know you got it on your list. It was definitely on my list to talk about too. So let's crack this bad mamma jamma open. You want to start?
Oh yeah, man. Uh, I think this is one of the best classes in this book, and I think that it gives you a prestige class that kind of it takes the fighter mage, idea, 'cause like everybody wants to play a fighter mage. Like everybody's got this, fighter mage idea rolling around in their heads, and different editions and different ways to do it. But this class just it solidifies it, and I have had the experience to DM a game where somebody played one of these, and it was just insane. Like this guy, he played a battle sorcerer, um, uh, spell sword, and it was just crazy the amount of stuff that he could do. Like he was casting in full plate, and he was like throwing around fireballs and doing all this crazy stuff. And he was also a very strong martial character. So it's just a very interesting class. And if you're somebody who wants to play a hybrid spellcaster, like this is the way to go.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like, I just want to talk about those prereqs real quick. This is one of those instances that we talked about. I think it was last session. Uh, right here, you're looking at this and you're like, okay, it's not bad. Proficiency with simple and martial weapons. Obviously, you're going to have had to have multi-class to even get to this class. So you're going to probably be fighter, my guess, and mage, my guess. Wizard, like wizard or sorcerer. Probably, I mean, personally, I'd probably go with wizard. Because if you were doing sorcerer, you'd probably have to start sorcerer and then go fighter. Um, but yeah, so like you're looking at, you got knowledge arcana 6 ranks, base attack bonus +4, and then you got 2 levels of arcane spells. So you're probably looking at a level 6 character, level 7 character. Could be level 6 actually. Now that I'm thinking about it, could be a level 6 character here. Um so but then you've got this special requirement here, and the special requirement's one of those ones that's kind of like, eh, I mean, this one's not bad. Like, it's not go hunt down a monastery in the in the Pandemonium Plain or whatever, right? But must defeat a foe through force of arms alone without recourse to spellcasting. It's kind of an oddball prerequisite for a class that is meant to be a sword spellcaster. Like, and it just kind of threw me for a little bit of a loop there, like looking at that special prerequisite for this class.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not a particularly difficult thing to do, but if you were a DM, I feel like that would be really easy to just throw out.
Right, because I mean, you could throw a goblin out there, and even at level 1, if this dude started off with a sorcerer or a wizard class, he would, he could beat it to death with his with his staff before it killed him. Or, he's going to be taking levels of fighter to get to this class anyway, because he's going to need a good base attack bonus to get to +4. So he's going to probably have a long sword. He can kill something pretty easy with that.
Especially because it doesn't mention that the opponent has to be of a certain challenge range either. So you could be higher level and then just go like, oh yeah, I'm going to go out to the training yard and try to
Kill a rat.
spar with one of those. Yeah, kill a rat. Anything like even a kind of lowish level wizard, like a level 4 wizard or something like that, should be able to 1v1 a rat. And again, house cats and 3.5 are a pretty terrible opponent.
Yeah, I'm just imagining a scenario where like the DM is really rigid on this, and he's like, "Nah, dude, you gotta fight somebody. You just got to use your strength." And so this character just like walks into a bar and just starts a bar fight.
Just gets punched in the face once and dies.
Yep.
From accidental overflow of stun damage.
Yeah. Just finds
Yeah.
finds a really weak guy and just picks a fight with him.
Goes around the streets looking for the weakest looking beggar he can find.
Yep.
I think it would be so funny to have a character that's just trying to do this and becomes like, he's just like, he gets a reputation for just being like the worst fighter in town because everybody can beat him up. He challenges like a little girl and she like kicks him in the shin. He falls over unconscious.
That'd be awesome.
But yeah, so I mean, this class is a prime example of a top tier class, especially from this book. This ignore spell failure. Just I don't know. Am I the only one who kind of fairly often forgets that this is a mechanic that you have to take into account?
I think most of the characters that have played in my games, if they've been spellcasters, haven't worn armor, so it didn't really come up. But yeah, if you're a spellcaster, if you're an arcane spellcaster, and you put armor on, which normally you wouldn't be doing, but in this case, you would. Yeah, you got to take that into account, and it can be a very easy rule to overlook.
It's one of the reasons why Mithril is so popular with arcane spellcasters, because it has a lower uh, spell failure chance, so you could wear potentially better armor for less penalty.
Right. I mean, I'm definitely guilty of like taking on my characters like mithril armor or something, because I think mithril specifically dictates a minus 15% to whatever the original arcane spell failure cost was. Um, of just like taking like a chain shirt or something that's only got like a 10 or a 15% chance to spell failure, and then making it out of mithril or whatever, and then just ignoring it for the rest of the time. And then I'll have other characters like my players who'll do something like that, but they'll do it with a bigger piece of armor that would still technically have a 5% failure chance or something, and just being like, it's a 5% failure chance. So it's like, do I really want to make them roll a D100 every time they cast a spell for a 5% chance it's going to backfire and hit them in the face? Like,
Honestly, I just have them roll a d20 and make it if they roll one, because it's the same percentage chance.
yeah,
And that would be pretty awesome. And I would I don't know, I would want to do that just to, see the backfires.
right. Because I mean, but we're also the DMs who love the critical rolls and fumbles chart, baby. Like, let's bring it out.
Love them.
Um,
That's why I love DCC so much.
but so many people, like when I told somebody, like I was trying to recruit people for my Dark Sun campaign, and they were like, yeah, yada, we're talking. I was like, yeah, like I let me get the somebody rolled a one. Let me get the critical fumbles chart out, and they're like, oh my god, you use that? And I'm like, yeah, why? What do you think I'm gonna do? Make you just hate yourself and be boring? Like, come on, man, let's have some fun here. Like, and they're like, I don't know if I want to play in that campaign if you're using a critical rolls and fumbles chart.
Oh man, the
I
critical rolls and fumbles are the best.
I do not like the critical rolls and fumble charts. For
No.
yeah, it's statistically sometimes it hurts certain classes more than others. Like if you're going to have the melee fighters, roll for this, well, the wizards are casting their spells. They don't have to make dice rolls. You know, they have less to worry about there.
Oh, that's why I have a special one for wizards. Arcane, it's the critical fumble chart for wizards.
Yeah, you see, that's
Yeah.
another reason why I love Dungeon Crawl Classics and Mutant Crawl Classics, because everything is a D20 roll or a D16 or a D24 or a D30 or whatever. So every class has the same chance to fail or to succeed, and also the charts themselves are just amazing. Like crazy stuff happens when you crit succeed or you crit fail.
Oh yeah, and it's exciting, everything like that, but rolling a one and then having your character chop off their own arm is a lot more long lasting if it happens to a player versus having a monster have it. And just statistically, as you go on, it really turns it kind of against the players, which is fine in some systems where players are very, or characters are very fleeting anyway. It's a very harsh system with a lot of quick sudden deaths. But it does skew it against the player's odds, which I kind of dislike.
Yeah, 100%. And that's kind of why I dig the ability to, if you don't like it, just throw it out, like do something else.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, but I've played with and without it and different games, and my preference, because to me the failure is bad enough. Usually, sometimes the failure means death for the character anyway.
Yeah, I mean it is really, it does kind of suck if you're a fighter or a melee character, martial character, and you run up and you take your whole turn to hit this guy and then you miss. Like, ah man,
I mean, let's not forget, like, poor Rytarek. He was like, "Oh man, we just stopped at that town. I bought a brand new Masterwork short bow. First arrow he loosed out of that, he rolled a 1, and then he rolled break weapon, so the string was snapped. He's like, well, I guess I can't use my longbow anymore. I like had to pick up a random goblin weapon or something off the ground and use that instead."
yeah, like fumble tables, you gotta pick the right one. Because if you don't, you can, like, if you're trying to be really hardcore and trying to, have a more gritty, deadly game, then, definitely get one of the more hardcore ones. But, if you wanted to, if you don't want to be quite that, deadly and permanent, like definitely pick one of the lighter ones. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
you,
there's lots of them out there. You can definitely have a choice of which one you're picking.
I also like this class right here, the Tattooed Monk. That was a good one.
Yeah, that
There's
was
just
another one I was thinking about bringing up.
there's just so many good just so many great classes in this book, especially like this one, the Thayan Knight. And I
Oh
feel like
yeah.
people, just general, like mainstream people, are gonna kind of, jive on this class a lot more nowadays because of the D&D movie. You had the Red Wizards in
Oh
there, and
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And like I like that's why I said that I wanted to bring this class up. Uh, can we just scroll up to the bar for it? Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not very big. You actually already passed it. There we go.
Oh
It's
yeah, that's
only
tiny. That's
it's
tiny.
it's only 5 levels, but it's super interesting to me because it's like, okay, yeah, there's these group of like people and they're knights and they're the protectors of the Red Wizards of Thay, which just have this super deep, rich history going back to I don't I don't know a lot about original like first edition D&D, but I know it goes back to second edition D&D at least. I'm pretty sure uh, that this is a are the Red Wizards of Thay? They're not in Dragonlance, right? They're in the Forgotten
Yeah,
Realms.
yeah, they're 100% Forgotten Realms.
Yeah, so they're in the Forgotten Realms. The Forgotten Realms have been around for so long, um, and so like I just think it's like it might not be like it's not a particularly like great class, right? But it's not gonna be like, oh man, this is one of those ones you gotta take every time because it's super good. But there's in the DMG, there's a prestige class that wasn't in my because I remember it must have been in a later printed edition of the DMG because I distinctly remember not having it in my original copy of the DMG was the Red Wizards of Thay, which is a prestige class for wizards that they could go into the Red Wizards of Thay organization, so to speak. Um, and so it would be cool, like if you were having an evil campaign where you wanted to like mess around with the Red Wizard of Thay, you have your wizard and he takes the Red Wizard of Thay prestige class and just be a very thematical kind of party. You could have your knight there that's like protecting you and your wizard who is a wizard of the Red Wizard of Thay and just have this like really fun, interesting thing like to go along with it. Um, and it's one of those like the Red Wizard of Thay has just always like been one of my favorite classes or favorite like organizations because I remember being a kid and hearing about them and hearing that like there were dragons and like Dracoliches and Dracoliches in second edition, if I'm not mistaken, to create one had to be created by wizards. They couldn't, and they were created most oftentimes by the Red Wizards of Thay, and it took 7 powerful Wizards of Thay to raise a single Dracolich. to life. And I just thought that that's such a cool like concept that this group of wizards is like super powerful, but even they need 7 of them to make like one dragon, like undead dragon.
Yeah, man. I really enjoy second edition. Like the second edition Splat books. A lot of those were really just fantastic. But I love this I love this class, and again, like you were just saying, I just think it would be really cool to have a game where, you had a character who was a red wizard and a character who was their bodyguard. And I also really like just like the how thematically appropriate a lot of their abilities are. So like here you've got Zolkir's Favor, and it says they automatically fail any saving throw against a mind affecting spell cast by a red wizard. So like you do what the red wizards say. Like you do not
Right.
get a choice in this.
Right. I mean, and obviously they're going to be they're evil, and they're the leaders or whatever of this group, and even with like I think in the Dungeons and Dragons movie, that the secret red wizard of Thay uh you know organization has these people working for them, and you don't know or whatever like at the time, but like these people, like when they get told to do something, they just jump on it, they just go do the thing, they don't question it, they never like like, well, do you really want me to do that? Like, no, they just go do the thing. And it's very on point with this ability thing right here. It's like when you get told to do something by, the people that are leading the group, like you go do the thing. Like,
Yeah, I feel like the Red Wizards of Thay are not an organization that would have like a spot on HR department.
right, right. I think they're pretty haphazard. They're missing Judy from the HR department being like, I don't think you should be talking to people like
Yeah.
that.
So can I take next Tuesday off? No, disintegrate.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I like the idea that they get to choose like any feats, like let me choose one feat except exotic weapon specialization from the fighter's bonus list of feats here. Um,
Yeah, not that one. You can take any of the other ones.
you can
Not
take
that one.
anything except for that one, but you get bonus fighter feats, which is like okay, it's just like you're still getting your fighter levels in as you level this up or whatever. Um, But then can we what's the next one after that? The next ability? There we go. Yeah. Scroll down. There we go. Finally, yeah. Once per day, standard action, a Thayan Knight of fourth level higher can inspire her troops and allies within 10 feet of the knight to gain 2d10 temporary hit points. The ability affects a member of creatures equal class level, yada yada yada, and lasts for the same number of rounds. It's kind of like this, like almost like lay on hands type paladin effect, but for people like, but as like an AOE, and not really like she doesn't have to run around and touch everybody. And it's kind of that whole idea that the like people working for the Red Wizards of Thay are going to do what the Red Wizards of Thay say, and the people that are right below the Red Wizards of Thay are the Knights of the Red Wizards of Thay, and so, or the Thayan Knights. So the Thayan Knights are going to have their like little allies, and they're going to be like, all right, don't you fucking die on me yet. You get out there and you protect these wizards, man. And the
Yep.
people are like, ah, yeah, let's go do that. And charge off into battle or whatever.
Yeah, it's not like a bards kind of thing where they're inspiring you with their, greatness and they're like, if you don't do this, then number one, you're gonna wish you were dead. Number two, you're probably gonna die, and then we're gonna raise you, and then we're gonna do some really messed up stuff to you, and then we're gonna kill you again. So like
Right.
so don't let this happen.
Yeah, don't fail at this because you will regret it for many, many lifetimes. Charles, do you have anything to say about this class?
I was going to say this one of those classes, especially with it only having 5 levels up to it, that I like particularly as a game master because it's really easy to make a counter involving a red wizard, give him a couple of these guards, to protect him,
Right.
maybe, or maybe just one and some more underneath them, which are lower levels. Just you could build an encounter around the idea of these two classes working together, which is something I really like. Much harder to pull that off between players because players all have their own ideas. of what they want for their characters. But these particular types of classes I think are very good for game master side of things, throwing something a little unusual or different without being too different.
I mean, it depends on the kind of group you have going into this, right? Like, I know, like me and one of my friends, we're just so in sync. Like we literally made the same joke about something in our heads, and then both said it at the same time the other day. It was just like we're just like that, right? And we've both been playing D&D together for years, and I already know that if we did this, he would want to be the Red Wizard of Thay, because he would want to just randomly mind control my character and make my character do stupid stuff that would be like that get me into trouble or like get me hurt or something, because he's just that kind of a douche. But if you know, you know. I love you. He's one of the only few people that I know for a fact listens to this, because I tell him every week to listen to this podcast. Um, but anyway, like, so like there's definitely, or like a boyfriend girlfriend combo, would pull this off really well. It's like one of those. It's a niche thing. You're not gonna be like, oh, I'll be the Red Wizard and you'll be the Thayan Knight or whatever, that you're gonna pick up with like a couple of random dudes off Roll20. Like, that's not gonna happen. But it's definitely a fun idea. Like, if you can get a couple people that are willing to like pull this off, and you're doing an evil campaign, it would be a fun, like, thematic way to like kind of play around a theme for it's like where you guys are the big bads instead of like having a big bad.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome. And I also think this would be a great opportunity to use like teamwork feats.
Yeah, because
It's like nobody ever takes those.
nobody ever takes those at all. Like the ability to take, I know there's a feat that's like lets you take damage for somebody who's within 5 or 10 feet of you, things like that, or like lets you add your AC to their AC, or give your shield AC bonus to somebody else, things like that. Um, can we just check the prerequisites for that Thayan Knight real quick before we move on?
Let's see. Prerequisite. There we go.
All right, Iron Will weapon focus. Okay. Any non-good base attack bonus +5. See, standard +5, or standard plus, standard level 5 uh prestige class here. Sworn allegiance to the Red Wizard of Thay special thing. Obviously, that makes sense, right? And if you're gonna do this, then your partner's probably already taking levels of wizard and gonna go into the Red Wizard of Thay. Um, so I mean, it's a fairly straightforward class, fairly, 2 skill plus intent, only 5 levels, not a big like investment, but great for character development and like backstory and just like and story like that. And like you said, even bringing it in for NPCs and bad guys, like you could be like, okay, we'll just make a level. We're getting to be about level 10. They're starting to figure out that the Red Wizards, they are the bad guys of this campaign. Let me throw some knights at them or whatever.
Yeah. The only requirement that I kind of dislike with this one is the weapon focused longsword, just because that's focusing the player to, if you're going to be a player in this, forcing them to choose one particular weapon um, for it, which can be a bit limiting.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I guess it's not that weird, because they did say that you couldn't take exotic weapon proficiency as one of your fighter feats that you take with the level up thing that you get here. Um, but I mean, honestly, if I was DMing it, I would say weapon
Weapon
focus,
focus.
any kind of weapon. Like pick your like, or weapon focus melee. Pick a melee weapon. That's your weapon focus of choice. Um, but outside of that, there's not a lot I would change about that. Um, are we wrapping up on Thayan Knight? Because I wanted
Yeah.
to talk. I wanted to talk about another. Again, this is not a very overpowered, not a very particularly strong class, but it is a very thematic and lore-filled class that I remember talking about with my original DM back when I was playing second edition, and I was like 6 years old. Was the Purple Dragon Knight, or the Purple Dragon Riders? Um, I think it's Purple Dragon Knights. Um, Yeah, so even here, this is a section where they talk about the actual like faction and what they're about and whatnot. But there's a is this the actual class or is this the section where they talk about the organizatia?
Yeah, I think this is just the organization because they got like them, they got the Ravagers, and this is also a really cool section of the book, just going over like different
Yeah,
organizations.
yeah, I saw that when we were talking in the beginning of this the podcast, and I was like, man, I got to remember to talk to like have us go back to check out that the organization section. But yeah, so the Purple Dragon Knights, uh, at least from what I remember when I was in second edition, again, they're a Forgotten Realms. Uh, I believe they're a Forgotten Realms subsection of knights that used to. I don't think they do. They get because there's no It's the word I'm looking here. 3.5 was very stingy with dragon stuff. But in second edition, I believe they rode around and used purple dragons as their mounts, which is why they were called the Purple Dragon Knights. Um, and I know you can get exotic mounts, and maybe even I think they're in the Draconomicon. There's a book to get a dragon as a mount. Um, but I don't think they have dragon mounts as one of their main things in this particular game, or in this particular book. But uh, yeah, I mean, once again, you're looking at a class that's it's very just straight up like pretty much just another cleric, like a cleric spin-off, so to speak. Um, what page are we on?
That's 71. And one thing I'd like to point out here that's very thematically appropriate, kind of with the Thean Knight that we just talked about, they have that same thing, Final Stand. Um,
Right,
so, that's a very like knightish thing to do. When the chips are down, the knight comes around and is like, "We're gonna do this." So I really think that would be cool if you had, you know, like a purple dragon knight on one side and a Thean knight on the other side, or two knights who had that same ability, and it kind of you just get into this like knockdown, drag out, who can survive the longest kind of thing.
right. And I think honestly, if I'm not mistaken, they're like because I think that they're both Forgotten Realms based, is that they kind of have a weird rivalry against the the Thean Knights. So it's almost kind of funny that they're um up against them or whatever. But yeah, like again, they're only a 5 level class, you know. Uh they get, you know, a couple of really cool abilities like heroic shield, you know, they can, which is like we were talking about with the Thean Knight, the team building like or the team feats like to get heroic shield, which is can be used to aid another action and given a +4 circumstance bonus to their armor class, instead of your average +2 or whatever, if you were like aiding somebody in defense of themselves. And so this is just one of those classes. It's like it's not a particularly powerful class. It is good base attack bonus, good fortitude save, you know, average reflex and will, or actually bad reflex and will. So it's even kind of bad, to be perfectly honest, as a class. But you know, I mean, their abilities are mediocre at best. But it's just a really like lore friendly and lore filled kind of like uh class that really brings me back to like old school D&D, like second edition, and just like the stories that were made, like that existed back then, you know.
100%. And I also think this would be a really cool class to to multi-class around and then prestige into.
Right.
I feel like you could do a lot of cool stuff there.
Right. I mean, like I don't know, like I like their stuff isn't really particularly great, but it would be cool to just be like, oh yeah, I've got a really good solid base for my character, and I'm gonna put him into the Purple Knights just or the Purple Dragon Knights just because I feel like that's where he wants to be at the end of his like journey, you know.
Absolutely. And we're kind of winding down on time here.
Oof.
So
Man,
just
we still
really
had so much to cover.
it's such a great book. We might actually have to do a second
Yeah, we'll do a part 2.
Yeah, because there's so much. Like I wanted to talk about the monkey grip feat. I wanted to talk about the campaign combat rules and the gladiator rules and all this other stuff. There's just you know my takeaway from this book is that you are so I got my copy on Drive Through RPG for $13, and that was $13 extremely well spent. I'm
Mhm.
sure nowadays you don't need to actually pay for it. You can get it in different places for free, but um, I had no problem paying $13 for this. This was just fantastic, and for like current usage. I'm kind of putting together this Starfinder game right now. I've been prepping it for a while, and it's very cyberpunk, very post-apocalyptic, very based on like William Gibson's Neuromancer and just cyberpunk stuff in general. And one of the things that this game has in it is like an arena, like a blood sport arena kind of thing, like a Thunderdome, kind of Mad Max Thunderdome kind of thing. And this book has gladiatorial combat rules, almost like wrestling rules, where you get bonuses if the crowd likes you, and you get negatives, if the crowd doesn't like you, unless you're a heel, then you can like get, you know, it's great. So there's just so much stuff in here. The classes are great, the feats are great, the organizations are great. Like there's just so much here, exemplified by the fact that we've been talking about this for an hour and a half, and we haven't even covered most of the stuff we really wanted to cover.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we're definitely gonna do a part 2 of this. I don't know if it'll be right after this, but we'll come back. We'll definitely come back to this book. It has so much more to offer us. Uh, like we've only gotten through the prestige classes. We haven't even touched on the other things. We've got plenty to work with here.
I absolutely agree. I'm 100% down to do a part two on this. So
Yeah,
Charles, before we leave, what do you think? Anything else that's just kind of standing out to you, or something that you really wanted to touch on?
yeah. If you're playing martial characters and the like, this book is, I don't want to say it's necessary to have, but it is quite good to have it. It has a lot of options for, especially for more martial characters, and yeah, it's incredible. There's some things in there that are quite powerful, um, and yeah, it's a good one. It gives a lot of player options.
And again, I still kind of feel like if you're playing Pathfinder, or you're playing 5e, or you're playing more modern stuff, you can still use a lot of this stuff. It's just it's kind of timeless in a way. Even if you're not using the prestige classes, as is, like if you were playing 5e and you wanted to play, a red wizard of day or a day and night, you could do that. I'm sure 5e probably has, those by now, but they might not. I don't know.
Yeah, it's definitely just it's a really solid book. I mean, he said like he was saying, it's one of those books that if you're playing a melee character, he doesn't want to say you have to have it. I'm gonna go out there. I'm gonna say you have to have it. It's like because it's so helpful. It's just super helpful. It's got options that are like gonna be making you really a lot better. And I mean, unless you're like, especially like if your GM is like me and a jerk and refuses to let you use the Tome of Battle, Tome of the Sacred Swords, whatever it's called. Um, yeah, this is a must have because like really a lot of melee characters, if they're running stuff from that book, and if they're not running stuff from that book, they're lost. They don't know how to make their character. They're gonna go play something else, and I just feel like there's so many great options in this book that they could pull from instead to make solid melee characters that don't feel like they're underpowered.
Absolutely. And so I think for today, that's a really good place to end off. We have by no means said everything that we would like to say about the Complete Warrior, but that will be remedied in the future. So for the D&D 3.5 book club, I've been Cliff. I've been joined by Lonnie and Charles. And I think that was a lot of fun. I had a great time talking about that book, and I think we had a great conversation, and a lot of really good stuff came of it. So uh, for this week, we will be signing off. So I will see you later.
Thank you.